Welcome to this very special series on India and Brazil on the KAJ Masterclass Live. In this show, along with my esteemed friend whom you can see on the screen, he's Tom Reaoch. He's my esteemed friend and podcast host. And together we'll dive into the fascinating stories of India and Brazil. Every fortnight, we will explore together our nation's journeys in business, culture, and politics and podcasting as we strive to find out our rightful place in the global arena. And joining us live, as you can see, from Campinas, Brazil, is Tom Reaoch, who has spent his whole life there. He's an American, but now settled in Brazil for a long, long time, known as the king of networking in Brazil. Very famous person indeed, lots of experience, with a wealth of experience in market development and product management across diverse businesses. Tom is the founder and host of 3 business podcasts, a public speaker, and is also an author. His deep expertise and extensive network can provide invaluable insights into Brazil's dynamic landscape. So get ready for an enlightening exploration of India and Brazil on the KAJ Masterclass Live. Welcome to the show once again, Tom.
Well, thank you. And I want to say, thank you from the heart for your audience, for my audience. We have developed a very personal and friendly relationship, you and I. And we found each other through the podcasting world. And I think that's striking. And that's striking from what I say that I am in terms of the king of networking. Because one of the things I've done, my success comes from people. It doesn't come from me. And I can remember every step of my career, and each successful step was related to a person. All right. It wasn't related to things, and it wasn't related to companies, even though companies and things were involved, but it was always a personal connection. And to what we are doing, and this for the audience, creating a special series comes from that. We've met some time ago, and we've met in the virtual sphere of the internet, of the podcasting world, of the world that's more remote than local. Even though you are locally in India, I am physically in Brazil. We both talk to the world. We've both interviewed people in the world. We've talked about subjects of successes in the world. So it really doesn't matter where you are. It does matter where we are, because we are both parts of very interesting economical markets, and we're also part of very interesting relationships with people. So you in India, the Indian culture, Indian success stories, me here in Brazil, the same thing. Brazil business, which is successful, a lot of people, not as many as India, but a population. Both our countries share, in terms of geography, size. All right, they're large countries, physically large. Lots of differences in terms of the geography, lots of differences in terms of climate. Some things that we share in terms of pharmaceuticals, agriculture. There's a number of things that cross. All right. So I think that's where we are. That's what this special series, I hope, is about. We don't want to exclude the rest of the world. I think what both of us share a common vision is to really include 2 very large, interesting places, India and Brazil, and talk about success stories, talk about challenges, talk about anything, right? Is one of the things is we're just going to talk. This is a chat. So it's not really structured. For our listeners, this is pretty much unstructured. And we've had other chats that haven't been recorded because that's where our friendship has come. We've relied on each other to talk. All right. We've reached out. What do you think? What do I think? You're a media professional, so it's successful. So what we've tried to do for audience, and I think we've done, is to melt some of our expertise and our knowledge. And what really attracts me is what you say, even on your LinkedIn profile, helping people learn better and earn better. I think that's what most of our listeners want. They want to learn. When they're listening to a podcast, they generally come to any podcast, not only ours. They come for knowledge, to learn something. So I think for us and for any podcast host, we need to add value. But also, people want to transform that knowledge into a value statement. And that could be, how can I make more money? How can I better my career? How can I create my business? How can I better my business? So they both walk hand in hand. So helping people learn better and earn better is also a fundamental part of our chats for us. What do we chat about? How can we learn better? How can we earn better? So I'm really happy to be here again. You've interviewed me in the past. I've interviewed you. Again, we've met out there in the world. We don't know each other personally. Someday I hope to do that. But we've also found that isn't necessary. All right. Some people say, well, I need to meet him. I need to be there. That's always an added attraction. In any networking situation, that really is important. But we can't keep that as a barrier. It hasn't kept us as a barrier. It's actually added to our interest in what each other does. So that's the thank you that I want to give you for having me on, for helping me and helping us think about how can we do something different. I feel, you feel the same. We are both unique podcasters. And what we're doing is just to be more unique, it's not something people, podcast hosts interviewing other podcast hosts. That's not new. But opening our doors and letting people come into just a normal chat, talking about India and Brazil and the rest of the world, I think that could be unique.
Absolutely. Talking itself in today's time when people want to, people have become aloof from one another is a very important thing. And talking and communicating can solve so many of the not world's problem, in fact. And with so many things happening in the world, where India and Brazil both are trying to find their rightful place, play that important role that they need to play, that destiny wants them to play, and it's the time that has come. India and Brazil both are part of BRICS, and there is a lot of synergy between the two countries. And we'll be talking about, we'll introduce our countries to each other, and the people in a way that the most common person can understand what the other country is all about. So when I will talk to you, I'll try and bring the Brazil, which is beyond football. A lot of people think Brazil is a lot about football. So beyond football, who stays there? What are the type of people? What is the culture? What is the way people live? What is the common man's aspirations? Is it different? Is it same? We all know it's the same. Humans are all everywhere the same. But actually, somebody telling from the ground exactly what things are happening. And so when we come down to that, we will come down. But first important thing is about podcasting that has brought, broken walls, broken barriers, broken shackles, shackles in terms of boundaries and
Right.
in terms of mental distances. It has created a whole new world. And this is the global world in actually where there is no visa required, no passport required, nothing required. You can just connect and talk. Such a wonderful thing that technology can provide, and especially if we can use it better. So let's talk about podcasting itself. And so what is happening in the podcasting world in Brazil, Tom? And to understand from you, if we look at the global aspect also, where are people listening to this podcast? What is the level of listenership of podcasts in Brazil and outside, as per your understanding? you are a top podcast host yourself?
Well, there's a number of aspects to that, what you've just said, and one of the things I've shared with you, and we'll share that with our audience later. Statistics that I see that I'm looking at now of where in the world are people listening to podcasts? Where in the world are people listening? And when we look into it closer, and what struck me, and we've talked about that, and what they do, they said approximately how many hours per week do you typically spend listening to podcasts? That was the question put out to get this. And what we see, the percent of adults who answered, 51% is Brazil. So Brazil, when we look out into the world, has one of the highest percentages of listeners. We get the same in India. India is even higher. It's 54%. So looking out into this listening world, podcast consumption, India and Brazil are two of the highest. If we compare to what people think is being the highest, the United States is only 38%. Countries in Europe are even less. Germany's 30%. Australia's continental is 37%. So we need to put into context. We need to understand. I think we do. You and I understand that because we're here. We're out here in this world. Most people don't realize that. The challenge that I have here in Brazil, back to the question, it's a language challenge. Because I started my first podcast, my first internet radio program, which is called Talk to Brazil. It was the world's first English language internet radio program about business in Brazil. It's in English. But not more than 4% of Brazilians speak English. And why did I create Talk to Brazil? It's in line with what we just said. I was trying, and I did, create information about business in Brazil more than football, more than soccer. Because what you said is true. Most people out in the world think of Brazil first as soccer, football, vacation, beaches. Those are businesses in themselves. There's nothing against that. But technology, agriculture, industry, the tech industry, health, these are also parts of economy, power, alternative energies. They're parts of any economy. And they're very strong here in Brazil. But most people outside don't know that. And most Brazilians on the other side of the same coin, since they don't speak English, it's hard for them to communicate this outside of the country. You're in a country where you have a population that has many languages. But there is some commonality because of English. I'm not saying it's universal, but it's commonality. We don't have that in Brazil. So what did I do in my podcasting career? I created my second podcast, which is called BBN Brazil. It's letters BBN, Brazil with an S. Talk to Brazil is Brazil with a Z. And BBN Brazil is a podcast that I do the same thing, an interviewing format, but I do that in Portuguese. So I found that to reach the listeners in Brazil, I need to speak in Portuguese. There are listeners who listen to me in English. That's a fact. But if I want to expand my reach in Brazil, it has to be in Portuguese. I have to speak the language of the people. And as you know, in your country, in India, and here in Brazil, it's a continental-sized country. Portuguese is sort of the same language throughout the country. But there are local and regionalities of ways you express yourself, that you should express yourself. And I learned that because I've traveled extensively within the country, north to south, east to west. I've had to even adjust my way of speaking in Portuguese to adjust to the regionalities, the local flair for speaking and understanding. And that's a learning experience. So as I did that in English traveling out in the world, I've done that in Brazil traveling within Brazil. So I've tried to melt my two podcasts as what I call a cultural bridge. Obviously, people outside the country who don't speak Portuguese, that's the other side. And part of the India-Brazil relations for years, India has a very strong presence. Indian companies have a very strong presence in Brazil. That's a fact, growing, very strong. But they do have the English, they do have the language challenge, as most other companies and countries outside of Brazil have. So understanding the local language or finding people in Brazil who can speak English is the starting point. So what I've done is that just adjusted 2 languages. I'm talking about business, networking, the networking tips. What I mentioned, it's about people, but my focus on networking is not only about meeting the people, it's exactly what we're doing. When I meet someone, I hope to create an ally. That's my focal point. I'm not looking for a client, and I'm not looking for a job. These 2 points, looking for a job or looking for a client, tend to be the focal point of most persons when they think about networking. But you and I have a similar approach. We're looking for allies. Your masterclass is to bring type persons to the world, talk about what they have to offer, going back to the learning, going back to the earning. And I think that's where we share this commonality. And so, again, looking at the map of where the listeners are, we are both where the listeners are. Looking out into the world, many countries and companies in that world don't realize that. So we have a job to do. And part of that job is just to keep telling and highlighting and showing the potential for growth, the potential for success in India and Brazil.
Absolutely, Tom. And we need to tell that a lot of people are talking in this part of the world, in India and Brazil, and that a lot of people are listening in this part of the world. And these 2 countries have just begun talking and listening. And there is so much to cover and to do in this field. And for companies who want to explore these markets, for them, podcasts and podcasters and podcasting can be a big marketing tool to reach the right sort of audience that they want to. You reach straight to the ears of the people and get to, and also now podcasting is so much, in video form.
Right.
So a lot of people get to that part. And what better than this? Means there is no barrier. As said, podcasting has not only broken barriers for people, but also
Right.
It has pulled down barriers for companies also. They can reach straight to their audience through podcasting. What do you think?
Now, what I think is what we do. The listening part, the seeing part, the technical capability of generating a podcast as a host has become easier and simpler as technology has come. So, and we see that. We see almost daily more people are becoming podcast hosts. So that's flourishing. That's good. Why? Because they have understood that people are understanding the value of communication, as these are communication tools. And really what we do, and I consider myself today, more than a podcast host, I consider myself a content creator. You, AJ, are a content creator. What we are doing is creating content. And how do we create content? We interview people. We share their knowledge. We spread that knowledge throughout the world. People listen and see together, as you are on YouTube. And so we are an ally in their progress. And more people are seeing that. And we see that statistically. Many of the people that we have interviewed later become podcast hosts, right? I've seen that. You've seen that. That's expensive. That's a good sign. Leadership needs followership. So if what we are doing, we're helping people understand that I'm not saying it's easy, it's possible. The technology is here. I have my microphone, I have my soundboard, you have your installation that's working. You're generating a video that goes to YouTube, that goes to LinkedIn. And anybody who wants to see, anybody who knows this can watch live in your case. In my case, I put the file up in a little bit of time and everybody's listening, and it's proliferated throughout the world. So we are content creators. And we know that, and you know that from times past when internet started, when a website was the only tool of being able to proliferate information. We've been through that phase. Obviously, a website is still important, but all of the other social media channels that are there have become a challenge. They're an opportunity and challenge at the same time. So how do you adjust to that? How do businesses, how do people, how can I, as a person who has businesses, involve myself? How much time do I need to involve myself in social media? So what we do, we take the time to prepare our interviews. We take our time to make the interviews, but there's even more time afterwards. How do you share that? So what I want to do, I'm going to take advantage of that. Within this chat, I'm going to create one of my podcasts, one of my episodes. And we're going to do that right now. I'm going to do the routine of how I start a Talk to Brazil interview. And I'm going to interview here within your own Masterclass Live. Can we do that?
Yes, we can.
So what people will hear, and they will see on your case, but they will hear from my side, what do I do before I start? All right. It's very simple. I create a very simple script. I say it's simple because I time what I'm going to say and what we offer as we create content. We're also doing that within a time frame. So I want my podcast to be around 20 minutes. That's the beginning, the end. And I want to introduce my guest within the first minute of the podcast. And I want to say those things that I think are important about that guest, but I want to say those to my audience. And one of the things that I defend in all of my podcasts is that we are creating voice searchable content. So we are content creators, and we are creating content that is voice searchable. And I say that in a funny way that in the States and other places in the world, people wake up and talk to their refrigerators and they talk to their car and everything. And these things answer. And that's the voice search. So my listeners and your listeners, and people viewing you on YouTube, they generally come from a search. They're searching for something and they will find us. So that's what we do. That's what I do. I'm generating content, interviewing people, putting it out there on the web, and it will be found. And it will be found throughout the world. So we say, what is your prime market? I have, obviously, when the statistics show, where are most of my listeners? It depends on the podcast. Many are in Brazil. But strikingly, and this is what we've talked about that, more than 10% of my listeners are in India. And that's been a constant. No, it is. No, it is. And that surprised me. When I tell my other guests who are not Indian or Brazilian, they're out in Europe or in the States, they say, hey, speak to the world. Absolutely. Speak to the world. Because many people want to speak locally. Obviously, you may have a service that's local. If you're baking bread, that could be local. But if you want to show how to make bread, that could be global. That could be YouTube. So what you have, share different ways of doing that. So what we're going to do now is start a podcast. Can we do that?
Yes, we can.
So what I always say, let's go silent. I'll introduce you. We'll run through the podcast. I'll close, and then we'll finish our chat. Okay? So it's a chat within a chat. Are you ready?
Absolutely.
Welcome to Talk to Brazil with Tom Reaoch, the business connector to business in Brazil. Talk to Brazil is a leading business podcast, talks with business experts throughout the world. I'm Tom Reaoch, an American known as the King of Networking, connecting people from my studio in Brazil. And today, my friend and business networking partner, Khudania Ajay, joins us from New Delhi in India. Ajay, a highly experienced media coach, independent journalist, podcast host with a proven track record of the global podcast show, the KAJ Masterclass Live, helping people learn better, earn better. And today's a special chat with Ajay. Ajay, welcome again. Thanks for being here.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the opportunity for coming on to your show.
Well, what I want to chat about today is a statistics that I shared with you of where in the world are people listening. And I see on your YouTube channel, you have thousands of subscribers. You have made hundreds, almost 700 videos that are out there. I'm sure you do some tracking and you know that you reach the world. But were you surprised of the statistics that I shared with you that show that India has one of the highest rates of listening to podcasts? Was that something new for you?
I am not surprised at all, Tom, and I'm in fact, if you want me to say, I will say these numbers have just started. And what will reflect will be huge numbers in days to come. The reason is that a lot of Indian population, a lot of people, youngsters, professionals, especially in the age group of say 23 to 35, they want, and beyond that, but majorly this chunk is who wants to learn. They want solutions for all the things that they are facing in terms of career, work, small business, entrepreneurship, or any other problem. And they want solutions. And that is what they are searching everywhere. And when they are the biggest search that they are doing is looking at YouTube videos. And also now YouTube, we have got YouTube podcasts and other places also. And podcasts have come up very big because you get to have different versions, people who are working on the ground, who have solved this problem for themselves.
Right.
That is the type of people I get on my shows, who have done it. So if they are seekers, people seek for solutions, seek for learning, and they seek in podcasts from podcast guests. And when they do it, they keep on learning about it. That's where I said that when you learn better, you start earning better. So that population is rising and it will continue to rise. And that number will start getting majorly reflected in all the podcast numbers that will keep coming in the future. It is like, it's like a relay race. The baton, the relay race started somewhere else, maybe in the US, Canada, other places. The numbers, my podcast numbers or show numbers are quite good in those places. US, Canada, Australia, Germany, France, UK, but if I look at the numbers on YouTube, then Russia, Ukraine, Turkey, all these places. So and India, obviously, it's right. My country. So people are, so many places it is in India, the numbers in India are big. Sometimes other places are, it all depends on episode to episode. But what I want to say is that the world is coming together. And podcasts.
And I agree with that, because I would add to that we reach everywhere. And I see that from my statistics. And if you just mentioned, if we put together all of the listeners from all of these different countries, that's a sizable market in itself. That's a sizable audience. And it just may be 2 or 3 in each one of these countries, but we're talking over 170 different countries. And language barriers, as we mentioned. We're being listened to. You're being listened to. So you are generating knowledge, and that's what people are searching for.
Yes. And knowledge is being generated by the masters. That's why I said, so my tagline is profit from the masters here. These are the masters who don't want to be thought leaders. They don't come to podcast to be thought leaders. They come there to share their uniqueness, share their knowledge, of the problems that they have solved. And they want people to know that this is how you can solve a problem for yourself. You see, this is what it is. People who know about a skill, they don't
Right.
need to be the biggest expert of the universe. They just need to explain it to
Right.
people. Like the other day, I was listening to a gardening program. I was seeing it, and so the person is sharing his knowledge with the world. How to start gardening means I am not a gardener. I don't know about whatever I plant. The plants do not last for long. So that knowledge is useful. When I listen to that, I listen to the usefulness of the knowledge. I don't
Right.
seek out the biggest expert of the world. I want to seek out for the person who solves my problem. Podcasts are now trying to do that. And that is getting also reflected in the searches. You see, the whole with the AI coming in, the search from the SEO, we have moved into the second level of searches now. The search engines will start looking at, and and my understanding is that in the days to come, the searches will now start. Earlier, it was only from the websites, but searches will start looking out, bringing you out the lines, and the transcripts out of the podcast themselves. That okay, this is the type of thing you are looking for. Here is that answer. It will come in snippets. It will come. So Google and all other search engines, perhaps in the days to come, will start bringing out the solutions from hidden anywhere in those audio files, video files, anywhere. And this is where the world will change. And this is where you
And
will
there's
start.
another point to that I see and you see. Two things. First, what we generate as content stays there. It doesn't evaporate, even though your show is live and it's now live on LinkedIn and you're going to YouTube. But those files will be there. You also upload that to other platforms. And my podcast, they're out there. Another thing that I find from my statistics, that somebody is listening, not to the same interview or episode that we've generated, they're listening to different ones at different times. And why is that? Because they're being found at different times.
Right.
So the knowledge for somebody in India or in Ukraine or Russia or Germany, they're looking for something different each day. And it doesn't have to be something we said yesterday, because most of them, back to your point about the master class, those persons, they're not looking to become the master there on your show or my show, but they know that what we do, we generate a loyalty within the web. Those files will be there. They will be found. So they know the value of having that content shared. And I think that's part of the mechanism. The learning, if we look at LinkedIn, what does LinkedIn become? It's a learning platform. More and more people, obviously they first went because they wanted a job or they wanted a client. But now they're going for knowledge. They want to know who knows. They want to hear. Yeah, they want to know what you're sharing. Who is this person talking about whatever? It could be gardening. It could be a CEO forum. All right. It could be failure in business. It could be success in business. It could be how did I start up, whatever. So these are things that people are looking for. And they're concentrated. Being on LinkedIn, even being on YouTube today, you help. YouTube has become a search engine. People go there to search. LinkedIn, professionals go there to search. And so those mechanisms of being, we say we're searching, we need to be findable. If somebody's out there searching, we as persons need to be found. And my success and your success comes from exactly that, being found. And it's every day. It's sort of like, you put out the bird seed, the birds come. What we do and how you do it, you're putting out bird seed constantly. The second thing I want to do is compare Brazil back to what you just said. The yearn to learn. The Brazilians are very similar in what you mentioned about the world, but here in Brazil, most Brazilians, as out in the world, they're accessing knowledge on what some people call a phone. The phone is not a phone anymore. It's a mobile computer. It's a mobile internet access. And that's where most Brazilians are listening. We're talking about podcasts specifically. That's where most Brazilians have their internet access. They may not have internet at home. They may not have a computer at home. But wherever they are, they could be riding the bus to work. And the buses here will have internet. The intercity buses, intermunicipality buses, they have internet, everything. If you go into a coffee, drink some coffee, you have to have internet. You go to the supermarket, internet. So people are accessing internet in many ways. And they're accessing the podcast, and in your case, your YouTube, even the LinkedIn as we're doing. That's how they're accessing it. They may be sitting at work right now watching us. We don't know. They could be riding the bus. They could be out to lunch. They could be having breakfast because of the time differences. But they're looking. They're looking. And in Brazil, again, the language is a challenge. But Brazilians are also learning English in whatever they do. So many of my podcasts, my English language podcasts, are used by Brazilians to learn English. That's out in the world. There are other people out in the world listen to us, our podcast, for the learning of the content, but also to hear the language. Because we know there are more second language English speakers in the world than there are native English speakers. So the more we can reach and help people understand, it's not because I defend English because I'm an American. No, I defend it because it has become a common intersection for learning.
Absolutely. As a language breaks barriers, in fact, and people learn different languages. Many people learn Hindi. They come to learn Hindi. In fact, I don't know Sanskrit. I know only a few words here and there, but a lot of people from outside, they come to learn Sanskrit in India. So learning continues, and this is what, as you say, that this breaks down barriers. Mm-hmm. Just like internet has done, podcasting has done, learning breaks the biggest of barriers. And then you find that we are so similar from the distance, somebody standing atop a hill, hiding behind a hill, and you find them threatening, but actually the person is afraid of you. And that's why, so when you meet, when you see, when you talk, then you learn. And when you learn, all the misconceptions are gone. And that is where humanity can, comes closer to each other, and people come closer to each other. And as human beings, we need to find those fresh things that can bring us together again. We have lost empathy. Maybe this sort of communication will bring all of us together. Just like when we are communicating right now, your podcast is going live there. So we are communicating. Some people will also listen to me. They will understand, okay, this guy is also like us. And a lot of people who are seeing you live, okay, Tom from Brazil, what's the difference? Everything is the same, maybe just a few things here and there. And he's talking the same language. He's talking about the same things that we are talking, what we want to hear. And that is where, it brings that commonality, that we are all one. And that's it where, and then you start, when you meet, when you greet, when you talk, you not only understand each other, you also do business to each other. And then
and business success comes from learning, from constant learning. When I say lifetime learning, what are we doing? What have we done? We keep learning. Obviously, we're offering content, but both you and I are users of content. I know you learn from each one of your guests. I learn from each one of my guests. I consider my podcasting as an MBA. It's an online, freshly regenerated, an MBA. And I've learned from each one of my guests. I've the same, interviewed hundreds of people in English and Portuguese, and I learn either about what they're doing, how they're doing it, where they're from, in terms of geography, of understanding. I've interviewed people, again, through many parts of the world. And so that's the connectivity. But we as podcast hosts, to make what we do better, we have to learn. What we're doing right now, creating a chat, creating something that unites two different countries, India and Brazil. And that was our chat before. How can we use what we do in another fashion? So that's learning. That's searching for answers with people that's next to us. All right. So India's next to Brazil, but we're next to each other. We're next to each other here on the video, on the YouTube. And what you said is important. Authenticity, I think, is really important what we do as podcast hosts, because people want to see real things. They want to see real people. We don't have to sit here and dance or get up and do anything or sing, but they need to know, I feel, they need to know that we're authentic, that we're real, we're not fake. We're not a voice that has been generated, a visual aspect in terms of YouTube that has been generated. They want to talk to real people. They want to understand that we have blood flowing in our veins. So, and what we're doing, we're learning. We're teaching and learning. The more you teach, the more you learn. The more you learn, the more you teach.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's the way to progress. That's the way you rise and you take everybody else also along with you. Everybody grows.
Our success, my success, has been through people. Always been through people. You have your followers, you have your subscribers. I have my followers and listeners. They believe, they found us. They valued the content offered. I'm sure you know that. Have they listened to all your 670 videos? Probably not. Have they listened to my hundreds of interviews? Probably not. And I don't have that as an objective. What I do have as objective is to, as you do, promote each one of them. Keep them out there, because they will be found. And they can be repurposed. And I've done that. You've done that. When I come across someone that says, well, do you know somebody, or do you know something about whatever? I can send them an interview. I said, well, I've interviewed a person. Somebody comes to me, what about India? I'll share it. Hey, I know AJ. AJ has YouTube channel Masterclass. Send them your LinkedIn link. Say, this is a person I think you ought to connect to. That's it. And that's how networking works. That's how what we do works. So we both know thousands of people throughout the world that are successful. And so what we do is, well, is it philanthropic? Is that a spiritual thing you're doing? No, I just think it's a personal requirement. The more I share, as you do, the more you share, the more you learn, the more you learn, the more you teach. The more you teach, the more you learn.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's all a collaboration all the time. It can never be an individual thing. Growth is collaboration. Learning is collaboration. And earning is also through collaboration, because you cannot create anything yourself. It has to be, even for the masterclass, like I cannot keep on talking to myself from the books. It has to come from people, from people who have done it, who have learned it the hard way, and now making it easy for everybody else. These are the people who make that big difference, and who are ready to come out and share it with the world.
Well, I think that's the personal touch, willing and wanting to share. What I found in my life, there are people who don't want to share. They feel that knowledge, whatever it is theirs. I don't think knowledge is ours. We have our knowledge, but we need to share it. If we expect to have a better world out there, if we're looking out into these statistics, and there's still a large part of the world that doesn't even show up in the statistics. They're not podcast listeners. So that just shows me, it shows you the potential for growth. There's still a lot of places to talk to or to show to, And that's what our secret is going to be. How can we learn to reach that, the inclusion? And I think that's the secret of our success.
Absolutely. So going forward, you see, as we keep on talking, we keep on chatting, we continue to learn about how we are learning, whether we are learning better about the show itself, like how do we try and make it better, and that is where the feedback comes in learning. We keep on asking the people that, okay, we are doing good, this is how is it going, is it good, we are trying to make it better. So we expect feedback, more feedback from people. We will continue to seek feedback from people. We will continue to seek learning from people, and making those changes to this discussion, this communication, this super chat between two of us, but actually we are just individuals. We represent much bigger, and we talk about two countries together. We
Right.
are just one of one person from these countries. But when people start looking at you from learning point of view, then you gain that trust, and it becomes your bigger responsibility to ensure that you keep that sacred trust sacred, and make sure that you represent that sacredness, that trust, in the best way possible. And that is what makes you special, not because of yourself, but because of the type of work you do. You can, the same.
I couldn't agree more because I mentioned authenticity, but trust and credibility also are part of that tripod for sustainability for anybody. But what I want to do, since this is the teaching learning experience, we are now going to close this episode, and we will continue speaking afterwards so that we will close out the Talk to Brazil episode now, okay?
Right.
And I do want to go back to thank you within Talk to Brazil for sharing your knowledge, your experience with our guest, okay?
Thank you. Thank you.
But where can our listeners find you?
The listeners can find me on the internet. It will become easy for them just to type either my name or the KAJ Masterclass Live, because it will throw up a lot of results, which might, be those platforms that they prefer. It goes to, but majorly if they ask, then it's the YouTube, then it's the podcasts, all the Apple and Spotify and Amazon and Google Podcasts, all these places, this KJ Masterclass Live that goes. And also, I put it out in text when it becomes possible. Each podcast, in the form of a blog, we put it out on Substack and Medium, so that people who want to read there, they can do that. So many people like reading. They want to take their time. They don't need to take notes from them there. They can just listen, because the podcast, we try to put out a blog, an article in the form of easy, that it's in the form of pointers that people are able to take note of the expertise that the guest has shared in the episode. And that is what where people can make the best use of.
Repurpose everything, right?
Yes, but you see, knowledge. It is like in physics, that the larger physics is always the rules of physics. But what makes a common man's life easier is the applied physics. That when you apply that knowledge to make your life, your simple days of life, easy for everybody. Same is with the knowledge itself. That repurposing should not be for the sake of repurposing, but in terms of making it easy to consume that knowledge. Some people like it in the longer format. Some people like it in audio format. Some people like it in a text format. And that is what you try to do with it, the limited means that being a podcaster yourself. I hope that I gain more strength, and then we can perhaps find more ways of putting it out for more number of people reaching out. Like right now, this whole attempt is that we are able to reach out to people. I am able to reach out to people in Brazil. You are also you are able to reach out more people in India. Though your podcast is already coming down to India, 10% of your podcast listeners are from India.
So thanks again, AJ.
Thank you.
And
Thank you.
for our listeners, again, you can find more about Khudania Ajay. It's Khudania, the last name Ajay. Find him on LinkedIn and again YouTube, which is the youtube.com KAJ Masterclass. KAJ Masterclass. Thanks to you, our listeners, and our sponsor, Focus MI Market Intelligence. Focus MI specializes in market research for the Brazilian agricultural market. And more about them at their site, focusmi.com. Talk to Tom, talk to the world. Goodbye, and thanks for listening. Thanks for listening to Tom Reaoch on Talk to Brazil, the business connector to Brazil.
You see, this is great. This is super repurposing that you are able to, this is what technology can help you in. This is what you have demonstrated to the people. What better way to teach people, Tom? Some people who want to understand more about podcasting, this episode can be that within an episode, it's like nowadays they say picture in picture.
Right.
The same way, episode within a live episode. This is cool. This is very cool indeed.
Well, I said we're unique. And what you do is unique. What I think I do is unique. And I think if we put both of them together in two unique markets like India and Brazil, that even becomes more unique.
Absolutely.
So if we go out and search how many podcast hosts have generated a mutual podcast between India and Brazil, it's going to be us. I can guarantee you there may be somebody in the future, but today, this is it. And so to our audiences, it's never fear to start something new, and never stop yourself because of the barriers or the challenges.
Absolutely. And so this is just the beginning. This is the first episode, a trial of errors, but some we are trying to refine. We will continue refining ourselves, and we'll continue to refine the way we deliver the message from the masters. We will try to understand things better so that we can explain things better. For we represent a lot of people who want to, share their understanding, share their knowledge, and for a lot of people who want to understand things, and then they can do their, own further understanding of things in the way they want to. But this is just the beginning. We will continue to come with more and more episodes as part of this special series, and we will continue to add value in whatever ways we know.
No, I think this is fantastic because it opens an avenue, actually opens a super highway for both of us. And we understand the potential for success in India and Brazil. What we should try to do and what we will do is to share that with others and have them drive down that same highway with us.
Absolutely.
But the feedback part that you mentioned, what I will do, and I'm sure you will, I will run this by different people to get their feedback. Because I think we're unique. You think you're unique. Let's see what everybody else thinks. Not everybody, but some people. Those people that I trust, my trusted counsel that I call, that they help me think. They help me position what I think is a good idea. They either will say it is, or they'll help me refine it. And I know you do that. So, and we'll do that together.
We will do that together. And people will also like to reach out to you, Tom. So what is the best way that they can listen more of you and how they can connect with you, Tom?
Well, the best is LinkedIn. What I say the point of my iceberg is LinkedIn. And it's very simple. My name, which is Tom, the last name Reaoch. They'll find me on LinkedIn, and they'll find my different podcasts on LinkedIn, and some of the other things that I do as an advisor. I consider myself a strategic business advisor, a multicultural expert regarding Brazil. But they'll find all of that and the links to the podcasts on LinkedIn. So LinkedIn, and I say for the point of the iceberg to float higher out of the ocean, we need to sustain ourselves with a wide base. So that's my go-to. It's LinkedIn, and you'll find me everywhere else through LinkedIn.
Absolutely. Absolutely. The world will certainly find you. You are the king of networking. You connect people, not just in Brazil, but you will be connecting more and more people and on the information superhighway called the internet. And I'm sure this podcast will be much more findable with your expertise, with your joining hands together on this show. So with this, it's a wrap on this very special show of India plus Brazil equals success, and we will continue to do our best to make this whole show a success for people to learn and to earn better, not just in India, not just in Brazil, but all across the globe, wherever people have that zeal to learn and to earn better. With this, it's a wrap. With this, it's a wrap on this very special episode of the KAJ Masterclass Live. Thank you so much indeed for joining us.
Thanks, everybody.